Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Detective, what do you do for a living?
I'm a detective with the City of Waukesha Police Department.
How long have you been a detective?
I've been a detective for approximately 12 years.
How long total in service with the Waukesha Police Department?
Approximately 20 years.
Is that your first job, Waukesha Police Department?
I worked a brief stint for about 6 months each at the Town of Brookfield Police Department part-time and the Town of Merton Lake Patrol part-time before moving on to the City of Waukesha.
What is your current assignment as a detective?
I'm in the computer forensics unit.
What type of things do you do in that unit?
Analyze digital data, digital video recorders, cell phones, regular computers, pretty much anything that can hold digital media.
Okay. Did you conduct a speed analysis in this case?
Yes, I did.
Can you walk us through when you set out to conduct a speed analysis? First of all, what is it, and how do you go about conducting that analysis?
Basically, throughout reviewing video for this incident, we wanted to determine if there was a way to get an accurate speed from the red SUV. I've been through some training, certified as an input ACE examiner. That's a software we use. And we determined that there were cameras that existed along the parade route on West Main Street that may have held useful information. Specifically, we were looking for surveillance video that was still in its native proprietary format that would still hold that metadata that would let us conduct a speed analysis. I did locate Bosco Social Club, which is a bar located at 260 West Main Street in the City of Waukesha, that had a proprietary format that I believe that let us do that analysis.
How many cameras were affixed to the Bosco's storefront?
There were two, one on the southwest side of the building and one on the southeast, at least that we used. I believe they also have video inside and towards the rear of the establishment, but we were concerned with the cameras facing West Main Street.
So once you get the surveillance video, what do you do with it?
I viewed the video to determine if it would be suitable. The video was, in my opinion, pretty high quality. I could see the vehicle clearly traveling westbound on West Main Street, so we believe that we'd be able to explore that further and try to conduct the analysis from that.
So what did you do?
The next step was we had to determine what an accurate frame rate was for the camera. Most surveillance systems have what's called a variable frame rate. In defining a frame, basically a video is a series of still images or frames put together to show motion. However, that can vary from frame to frame. That timing may not be exactly the same. We went down to Bosco's and placed a device in front of each camera called a DFIR light board that's supplied and calibrated by the company Input Ace. We placed it in front of each camera, and that board's got a series of flashing lights that have timing in them. Recorded a video of that board from each camera, and then returned to my forensic lab and placed that into the Input Ace software, and we were able to calculate the timing more accurately between each frame, so we had a more scientific approach to it.
And what did you do with that information?
Once I had that information, let me back up. Prior to having that information, I had also asked Specialist Plata of our Criminal Evidence Forensics Unit, our traditional forensics, to respond to the area of Bosco's and use the department's, it's called FARO, F-A-R-O, their 3D laser crime scene mapping device. They mapped various points in front of Bosco's, and we were able to basically find the orientation and the position that the eastbound camera was facing. And then once that was done, we could take a screenshot of that 3D scan, which measures, my understanding is millions of points. Once I had that done, I was able to bring that into Input Ace software to begin the overlay process where I could overlay the images on top of each other. So we brought the screenshot of the 3D scan in, brought a partial video in of the red SUV traveling westbound. It began to compare points from the 3D scan and the video and began to plot those points. For instance, a intersecting crack in a sidewalk. If I could see it in the 3D scan, I would plot that point and then match it up in the video. Did that over a number of points, and then that enables us to lay the video identically on top of the 3D scan. Once that was complete, then that's where we started bringing in the light board video to find out the timing, to find out how many milliseconds or seconds passed in this incident. In this particular video, I was concerned with frames 35 through 60 of that vehicle traveling westbound. Once I obtained the timing from the VFR light board, I determined that with the assistance of the software that the average was 0.834 seconds had passed in those 25 frames that that vehicle, or I'm sorry, 26 frames that that vehicle continued westbound. What that does, it then gives me a low end and a high end that I can use for a margin of error. So it said the longest time it would take for the vehicle to travel westbound through those 26 frames would be 0.838 seconds, and the quickest time that it could pass through those 26 frames would be 0.830 seconds.
Okay.
Once I had that information, I was able to completely overlay the video onto the 3D scan, and I could start at frame 35, and it enables me to overlay it within the 3D scanning software, and I was able to drop a small point. The clearest point of reference in this view, as there were people around and other things in the area, I was able to pick the front passenger's wheel and drop a point directly in the center of that wheel, advance frame by frame until I was at frame 60, drop another point, and then I can use a slider to go back and forth to either have the vehicle present or just the 3D scanning. Once I had just the 3D scanning, then I could take and measure the distance from that first point in frame 35 to the last point in frame 60. And then I was able to calculate that, I was able to input that in with the different measurements of 0.838 seconds and the 0.830. When I did that within the software, it told me that the distance was 12.7477 meters. When I converted that to feet, I believe it was 41.8231 feet. That allowed me to compare that with the fastest that the vehicle could travel and the slowest that the vehicle could travel. And with the margin of error, convert that to feet per second and then miles per hour, which came up with a measurement for those 26 frames of 33.7 to 34.6 miles per hour in those particular frames.
Okay. Can we project for the witness and for the jury exhibit number 15, which has previously been received and published?
Go ahead. Do you recognize the area on the map depicted in Exhibit 15?
Yes, it's the 5 Points intersection area of downtown Waukesha.
The screen in front of you is a touch screen. Could you just draw a small little X to depict where the approximate location of Bosco's is?
I believe it's going to be roughly right about here.
So north side of Main Street?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't think we need to save that. We'll just say it's an X between the 5 Points intersection and Gasper Street on Main. So we'll clear that and take that down. And now can we please project for the witness and for the jury exhibit number 31, which I think that's also been received and published. And it has, yep. Okay, you see the screen in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Is this the video from Bosco's that you have been talking about today?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start at about the 10-second timestamp. Now you were talking about 26 frames, I think you said?
Yes.
Okay. Let's slow this down to about 50%, please. And we'll play from this point.
9 seconds?
Sorry, yes, 9 seconds. pause. We have paused at 16 seconds. So you're basically measuring what? Walk us through the screen here. What are you measuring?
So as soon as the red SUV came into view of the video traveling westbound, once I had a frame where there was no obstruction, I could see the full passenger side tire. That's where I dropped my first point, and then I let the SUV continue westbound until I found another spot where there was no obstruction. Now, when I overlaid it between the 3D software and the video I have here, during this video there's no foliage on the branches. During the 3D scan there is foliage, so that blocked a little bit, so I had to stop a little earlier than what I wanted. But I was just basically measuring how far that SUV or that wheel traveled during those frames in that amount of time.
Okay, so you're measuring distance and time.
Yes.
And from that you're calculating speed.
Yes.
And you've already talked about the different variables that you took into consideration, right?
Yes.
And that resulted in, what's your ultimate conclusion?
33.7 to 34.6 miles per hour.
And the 26 frames that you're talking about, they are in this video?
Yes.
Okay, let's just play from the 16-second mark. Pause. And we've stopped at the 17-second mark. So the 26 frames are entirely within that 9-second to 17 seconds.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Cross.
Very, very briefly.